That's why I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of excited about this. It is a, I guess there is free food and free open bars.
So there's things in there that are just thinking through a couple of steps beyond.
She's running as a Democrat. Running against the incumbent who's a Republican.
Ballotpedia. That's got a really good explanation of all of them.
Let me try this again first.
Something great.
Sounds like anyway, are you doing well?
But yeah,
That's why I'm strongly against
the incumbent. Not a conservative.
Well, at least it's easy. Doesn't stop it.
Yeah. So it's warmer here. I hope so.
Pretty broad. Pretty clear. Until it started raining.
You got it fixed, ready to go? Pastor Kemp, would you like to lead us in a prayer?
Would you bow your heads, please? Father, we're so thankful to live here in Rolla, a good community. And we're so thankful for the people, our neighbors, just good people. We thank you for them. We thank you for your many blessings today and throughout our life, upon our lives, our families, and this community. And God, we pray that you would give these men and women who are elected to serve the community the knowledge and the wisdom they need in making the right decisions for the people of our town. And God will thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I'd like to open the meeting with the pledge. John?
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Consider approval of City Council minutes from October 1st and October 15th. Are there any questions on those minutes?
Move consent agenda to be approved, sir.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have one public hearing tonight, and that's an ordinance approving the final plat of St. Maria's to Tangent. James?
Thanks. So I'm just going to go very quickly through the two presentations I have tonight, since we've already seen these cases multiple times. And I just wanted to point out that you can get full agenda packets with full staff reports on rollacity.org. Rolla Channel 16 has their own website. And also there's a new YouTube video for Rolla Channel 16. I know that site address is really long, but you can just search for it in YouTube. So St. Maria's subdivision is approximately 250 feet north of the intersection of Liberty Drive and McCutcheon Drive. It was recently annexed, zoned R3, and a development agreement was approved in conjunction with this development. St. Maria's LLC is the owner. Mike Waisner is the registered agent for the LLC. It's a 58-lot subdivision, anywhere from 1 to 4 units per lot. There's commonly owned property. Amenities include a clubhouse, dog park, and an open space. And there are architectural standards that are through the covenants and restrictions declaration. There are architectural standards. This is where we are in the process right here with the red arrow. They had the preliminary plat was approved about a month ago, and then it was determined by the interim community development director that there was substantial conformity, and now we are going to have a public hearing today, and then a final reading at the next city council meeting. They've also submitted final development plans. Those must be approved before the city council can approve the plat, and before we record the plat, the parkland fee must be collected. And just real quick about conformance to the subdivision regulations, I pointed out four things here that were uniquely considered. There was a gravel emergency access road instead of 2 means of ingress and egress through a public street. A variance was granted for that, but it was also in the development agreement. We have large outlots were created. You're only supposed to do that if they're if you can further subdivide it and put roads through there. But there's use restrictions on them so that so that they cannot be used for residential. So there's no reason to have to enforce that provision. Street grades exceeded the maximum, but that received a variance. And outlot B does not have frontage on a public street, but that is permitted when there is a sidewalk, when there is an easement sufficient in width to permit in part emergency access. No variance was needed for that. And this is the last slide. It just talks about the changes from the preliminary plat to the final plat. The only minor changes was there was one less sidewalk into outlot B. We only required to have one. This is outlot B right here where the dog park is going to be. Lot 23, which was right here, turned into outlot E. So before in the preliminary plat they had 4 outlots, now they have 5 outlots. So right here, outlot E, that's new. There were 15 lots around this block, but it turned into 16 because they took that lot, that residential lot, and squeezed it in here and reconfigured these lot sizes to fit 16 instead of 15. So the number of residential lots does not decrease. They just increase that number of outlots by 1. And the number, while there are still 58 residential lots, because they reduced the total acreage of residential lots, the acreage of residential lots was reduced by almost 12,000 square feet. So no protest petitions have been filed. There were Judy Jepson and Cameron Schweiss spoke at the public meetings at both for the preliminary plat. By a 3-to-8 vote, the majority of the City Council voted to approve the preliminary plat of St. Maria's Tintandra. The action requested from the City Council is to conduct the first reading and the public hearing on an ordinance that would approve the final plat of St. Maria's Tintandra.
Thank you. Any questions for James?
You're welcome.
If not, officially open the public hearing. Is there anyone that owns property within 185 feet of this request that would like to speak for the plat approval? Is there anyone that owns property within 185 feet that would like to speak against the approval? Is there anyone that owns property outside of the 185-foot barrier that would like to speak for? And is there anybody that owns property outside of the 185 feet that would like to speak against? If not, this closes the public hearing. Any more questions from council? If not, can we have the first reading?
An ordinance to approve the final plat of St. Maria's Tintandra, which is the major subdivision plat that divides an approximately 42-acre tract of land that is identified by Phelps County Assessor's account number of 12081 into 58 lots and 5 outlots.
Next section is the acknowledgements and special presentations. We have 3 tonight. The first is a presentation by the Rolla Police Department for the Civilian Service Award.
Mr. Richard Aiden, please join me up here.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me first start. I can't give any officers' names involved in this or the name of the suspect, but I'm going to tell you what happened. In the first week of October, a Pulaski County deputy had attempted to arrest the subject. The subject took off on the deputy, and the deputy chased him in a foot pursuit. During the foot pursuit, the guy pulled the gun and pointed it at the deputy, and the deputy had to dive for cover. Because of this, the guy got away. Well, we knew who this guy was. This guy was not only wanted for that, but he was also wanted as a parole absconder. Well, one of my officers and a corporal from the Phelps County Sheriff's Department saw this gentleman, suspect, on the street and want to arrest him. When they want to arrest him, the fight started. The officer said, my officer said, that he was literally fighting for his life. This guy, they don't know if he was on drugs, they don't know what was going on, but they were afraid that he had a gun. He kept reaching for his waistband. They tased him, and it had no effect. They were literally fighting with this guy, and they said it got to the point where they were going to have to shoot him to keep from getting hurt. Well, while this was occurring, there were probably 4 or 5 people standing around with their cell phones out, and instead of helping, taping this, until Richard here decided to join in and help the police officers. And with his help, the other police officers were hurt, and the subject was taken into custody without any further injury than he received in the original resisting arrest. Now, I can honestly say that my police officer said, had it not been for Mr. Egan's actions, that the suspect probably would have been dead, or a policeman probably would have been dead. The highest award that we can give a citizen is the Citizen Service Award, and it is my honor to give Richard this award.
Thank you.
Boy, an audit after that is going to be pale in comparison. Is Tammy here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Next item is review of the fiscal year 2017 independent audit.
Hello, my name's Tammy Alsop. I'm the partner on the job for the City of Rolla's audit. I know it's hard to compete with that, so I'll just leave that. I'm glad somebody finally jumped in. That's awesome to think that one of your citizens would actually jump in instead of everybody just, I'm sure everybody had their cell phones out, you know. So that's awesome. That has nothing to do with the audit, but I think that's so we'll go over the audit just a little bit. You received an unmodified opinion on your financial statement. That's the highest form of assurance that an entity can receive on their financial statements. We used to call it unmodified, but I think that kind of, unqualified, and I think that kind of confused people. So, so they changed it to be unmodified. So now you have an unmodified opinion. So that's still the same thing as what they used to call unqualified. And you'll notice that over on page 2 in under opinions. There it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. The financial statement of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the discretely presented component unit, and each major fund of the city as of September 30, 2017, and the respective changes in financial position where applicable, cash flows thereof for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So again, that's what we call an unmodified opinion. So that's a very good opinion on your financial statements. Because the city did receive over $750,000 in federal awards, and, excuse me, they expended over $750,000 in federal awards, then you have a single audit. So we did issue a single audit report also, and there were no problems, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses with that either. So that's a very good opinion on that report too. So you did receive 2 reports this year. If you turn over to page 3, the management's discussion and analysis, this is a short synopsis of what actually happened during the year in the city. First of all, it focuses on the government-wide activity. So what that is it's all the, it includes all the infrastructure, all the capital assets of the city, and all the debt of the city, including the net pension asset for the logger's pension. And then you also have a net pension obligation in there. So you'll notice under the first bullet, talks about the net position of the city's governmental activities increased by $904,000. And then the net position of the business type activities, and that's the sewer and the environmental services, that increased $19,211. And then the second bullet, you have the assets and deferred outflows of resources of the city exceeded its liabilities and deferred inflows by $105 million. Net position up from $104 million from the prior year. Of this, $14 million was unrestricted for overall operations and may be used to meet future obligations of the city. And again, this is on the government-wide basis, so this is going to have all the infrastructure of the city, including all your streets and everything like that. But then it also has all the debt of the city in those numbers. Then it talks a little bit more, going down towards the bottom of the page, the second bullet from the bottom, you'll see at the close of the current fiscal year, the city's governmental funds reported combined fund balances of $8.5 million. This is what you're used to looking at. This is this talks about the funds on a modified accrual basis. So as again, what I said, like I said, that's what you're used to seeing. So it just has the receivables on the books and the payables for the modified accrual. And then at the end of the fiscal year, unassigned fund balance for the general fund was $1.4 million. Over on page 6, you have a short synopsis of, again, this is the government-wide activity. So you have the assets. So you have the current and other assets of $12.5 million for the governmental activities, the capital assets of $78 million, and these capital assets are depreciated, so your infrastructure, of course your land isn't depreciated, but all your infrastructure, your roads and things like that are depreciated. So that leaves you governmental activities total assets of $90,900,000. Then you have deferred outflows of resources, and that mostly has to do with your pensions. So you had $1.9 million deferred outflows of resources. Then you had liabilities of $1.2 million, long-term liabilities of $10,700,000. So that leaves your total liabilities of $11,980,000. Then you have the deferred inflows of resources, $491,000, leaving a total net position of governmental activities of $80,388,000. Then if you include the business type activities of the net position of $24,780,000, that gives the city then the total $105,170,000 for their total net position. Then over on page 7, this is the statement of revenues and expenses. First, it talks about the total revenues. So you see you have charges for services, and it starts with the revenues first. So you have the charges for services, the operating grants, and then the capital grants, and then the regular general revenues. So you'll see in the governmental fund you had $22 million in revenue this year compared to last year of almost $19 million. You have expenses of $22 million compared to the prior year, which was $19 million. So you had an excess before transfers of $482,000. Then you had transfers of $421,000. That left you with net change of $904,000. And that mainly had to do with your increase in your charges for services. And over on page 8, just gives you a little more detailed information. It talks about on your governmental activities. Up at the top there, it gives you a net cost of governmental activities. So it gives you the cost of the service, and then it gives you a net cost of the service. I mean, if you need more information, there's more information in the back on that. Then it talks a little bit about the other funds. And then it goes on and talks about the capital assets over on page 10. And then the long-term debt down at the bottom of page 10. So your long-term debt decreased, which is good. That means you're paying your debt down, and we didn't have any problems with any compliance issues when testing the debt or anything, so that's very good. So your debt went from 16.9 million down to 15.4 million. And then there's some economic factors in next year's budget, some information on that. Then if you turn over to page 13, you have more detailed information of your statement of net position. Shows you all the cash, receivables, the prepaid items, the net pension asset. Again, this has to do with your loggers information. And then all the liabilities, your accounts payable, your unearned revenue, your accrued interest, and then the your long-term debt. Then on page 14, this gives you more detailed, again, information of the expenses and the charges for services, and then all your your general revenues. On page 15, this is what you're used to seeing, your balance sheet for your governmental funds. You'll notice that the general fund, the total assets of your general fund is almost $4 million. The liabilities is $589,000. So that left you a total fund balance in the general fund of $3.2 million. And the amount of unassigned fund balance as of 9/30/2017 is $1,400,000. Then on page 16, you have the reconciliation of your balance sheet to the government-wide statement. So you would take your total fund balance, you would add in your capital assets, and then subtract out your long-term debt to come out to your net position. On page 17, you have your statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance for your governmental funds. The total revenues for the general fund is $10,200,000. Then the total expenditures is $11,238,000. Then you had some other financing sources of $1 million, leaving you a net change in the fund balance for the general fund of $8,000. And then on page 18, you again have the reconciliation between the fund statements and the government-wide. On page 19, you have your proprietary fund. So you have your sewer and your environmental services fund, and then you have your internal service fund, which takes care of the health insurance. So you'll notice your total sewer. You have total sewer and environmental assets of $4,185,000. Total current assets, I'm sorry. Then you had total non-current assets of $29.1 million, leaving you total assets of $33.3 million. And on your proprietary funds, you do have the capital assets where you don't have those on the fund statements. Then you have the debt for that with your current liabilities, $1,400,000. And then your total non-current liabilities, $7,400,000, leaving total liabilities of $8,800,000. And then you take your total assets minus your total liabilities to come up to your net pension of $24,780,000 for your enterprise funds. Over on page 20 is your operating revenues and expenses for your your enterprise funds. And again, it shows you how you come down to the $19,000. Over on page 21, you have the statement of cash flows. This actually tells you how the money came in during the year and how did you spend it. So you received from customers $6,600,000, and this includes both sewer and environmental services. Then of that $6,600,000, you paid out to suppliers $2.6 million. Then you paid out to employees $2,200,000. So that left you net cash provided by operating activities of $1.7 million. Then you had cash flows from non-capital. You had operating grants of $7,000, and then payments to other governments, $273,000. You had operating transfers out of $421,000. Then you had cash flows from capital, so you actually purchased some capital assets, $254,000. You sold some capital assets, and then you had payments on your debt. And then you go down to the cash flows from investing activities, so you show where we have the maturity investments, the investment income. So your net increase in cash and cash equivalents for your total enterprise fund was $147,000. So the cash and cash equivalents for your total enterprise funds went from 3.5 million up to 3,600,000. On page 23 starts the notes to the financial statements. There's not a lot of change in the footnotes this year. For 2018, you will have the OPEB will change for 2018 financial statements. So you'll have that now looking like loggers, and we will, I can show you where that is. I always like to point out, though, on the bottom of page 31, where it talks about the securities of the bank balances, because if your bank balance is over $250,000, you have to make sure that it's insured or collateralized. And as of September 30th, all your balances were insured or collateralized, so that's very good. No problems there. Let's see. And then, as I said before, over on page 35, it shows you your restricted cash and investments. And then, and these are some of these are restricted cash and investments because of bond covenants. And we had no problems with any compliance with bond covenants or anything during the year, so that's very good. And then you talk about the long-term liabilities, and that goes on for a long time. Then your page 47 starts the pension note, and this is loggers' pension. This changed a few years ago, about 3 years ago. You're also going to have this a lot of this same information now for your OPEB. So you'll see a big disclosure, so there'll be a bigger change this year in your financial statements. I don't exactly know what the change is going to be. I haven't seen the actuarial statement yet, so I don't know what the change is exactly going to be for the city. But I'll make sure and point that out when we talk about the financial statements then. The rest of the statement, there's not a whole lot of change in that. You have some budget to actual information in the back of the financial statements, and then you do have the information for the logger's pension for the 3 years that it's been effective. And so you'll also have the same information for the OPEB on that starting in 2018, and that'll start going 10 years, but it'll start in 2018 and go forward. Does anybody have any questions?
Maybe I have one.
Sure.
Government accounting is science in itself. Can I take you back to page 8?
Sure.
And if you could explain that table a little bit more.
Yeah.
The difference between the total cost and the net cost.
Okay, the total cost is the actual total cost that has been expended for that department. And then what that does to come over to the net cost, it actually takes your charges for services. So if you charge for, say, your recreation, you have memberships and things like that.
Use public safety.
Public safety. Okay.
How do we charge $6.4 million for public safety?
Well, you had 6.9 million, and then you probably had some grants and things that came off of that. So anything that actually takes care of that department by itself, that's strictly for that department, such as if you have, a lot of times you have the grants where they go out and they do their overtime grants and things like that. You take those grants automatically off that expense, and that's what that's doing there. So it comes out to a net cost of $6.4 million. So somehow you have to figure out, well, what of that $6.4 million you used sales tax, real estate and personal property taxes, and all your other taxes to pay for that.
Okay, so there would have been charges for services, bond proceeds, or no?
No, no, not bond proceeds. It's only if you actually charge for a service, such as maybe they charge for police reports or something like that, or any kind of grants they have. It has to deal directly with that, like, service. So, but sales tax doesn't. Even though you might have the Prop P, you cannot take that sales tax, and don't ask me why, this is just, because, a lot of times that Prop P is strictly for the public safety or whoever it's for, but for sales tax, you cannot take the sales tax directly against that service.
So in our case,
As a
Prop
charge
P
for
was
services.
a tax very specific to parks. So on this chart here, we're not reflecting that as an offset to parks expenses.
No.
I think another way of looking at the net cost of services, what those services actually provided by taxes in one form or fashion.
Right. That's how
Well, you
much
just
your
said
taxes have to take.
Prop P can't be applied to parks.
Well,
It's not in the total cost of service. It is in,
It's the delta.
yeah.
It's in the delta.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
right, sorry, that's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, they don't let you take any sales tax directly off that, which would be nice if they would, but, they don't. They don't let you take any sales tax directly to that, such as even your street. They don't let you take your transportation tax, your half-cent
See, now you're
transportation tax
confusing me when
directly.
you said you can't take it. I thought I
No,
understood
I'm
what you
sorry.
said. But no.
He's right. The way you take, I'm sorry, you just can't take it directly against the public works line item to show the net cost, is what I meant. So it's going to be the amount that's below the line to take care of all those expenditures.
Okay.
So it doesn't come
So
off
Prop P
directly.
revenue is going to be used in this case to reduce the 1.6 million.
Yes.
Right,
I got it. Thank you.
sorry. That is hard to explain.
I'll ask you again tomorrow. But I Any other questions?
Tammy, you mentioned a couple times OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits.
Other than pension.
Other than pension, it's, the only thing we have is that we allow our retirees to stay on the health plan until they hit Medicare eligibility.
Right.
So I'm not sure that the council's familiar with that. So I just wanted to clear that out, because it becomes an interesting number here. It's something that now we have to account for. You have to
Right.
show what that liability is for the future cost of carrying those employees, but we haven't contributed,
Right.
set aside dollars for that expense.
Right, and that's a pay-as-you-go plan, which most of them are like that. But the new government standards say, we want you to put that liability on there as if you needed to pay it right now. So if you needed to pay all those, because because your retirees get this better deal because they're in a program that has everybody in it, so they can get cheaper insurance than if they were just by themselves. That's where the cost comes in, the differential in the cost. But yeah, the GASB came along and said, well, we want to put that in there in your financial statements, and that's only going to be on the government-wide statements. It's not going to be in the fund statements. It's not something you have to pay right away, but it's going to be in there, and it's going to show again like the loggers is. So it's going to show either a net pension asset. It's not going to show a net pension asset, I'm sorry, because it's not funded. If it was funded, it would be a net pension asset. But usually the health care is never funded, and so those are net pension obligations.
And it's just funded as, and you made that
And it's
point,
pay
it's
as you
funded as
go.
you go. So every
That's
year
right.
we're covering that cost. The health plan
Right.
cost is covering both the employees' health insurance as well as the retirees' health insurance portion.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And just for the council, maybe you all remember this, but retirees pay double the premium that regular employees pay, so.
Right, but it still is not the premium that they would have to pay if they were
Correct.
by themselves. I
Correct.
mean, I guess that's the way they look at it in OPEB.
Correct.
Is our loggers commitment fully funded?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at, let's see, you look on page 49, down at the bottom of page 49, you see there all the way over to the right, it's called net pension liability, and in parentheses it says asset. So because you have an asset at, and then again, this is as of June 30, 2017, because that's when Loggers actually does their liability, their actuarial information. So the city was overfunded $2,860,000. And what this can do is sometimes it'll lower your contribution, how much the city has to contribute to the plan, but not leaving any difference between you being a L6 or a L7 or anything like that.
Do
But
those
it could
adjust
just
on
bring
a
down.
real-time basis? No, so in other words, in 2018, were we able to reduce our payments by $2.8 million to bring it back to zero?
No.
Yeah, and a little surprisingly, they actually did about a 10% increase. We had an increase in
So
our
what's
loggers'
it now?
contribution.
You did? Really?
Yeah, I was a little surprised with that because we were overfunded and I thought it was going to play
So
out.
we
Yeah, I would
overfunded
think it
even
would go
to a
down.
greater extent in 18?
I don't know about 18.
I would have to look at 18. I don't know off the top.
I
of
guess
my
it's
head.
not, but I don't know that. And they're forecasting all those based again on that future of what's that retirement expense going to be to the plan, so.
Right. Right, that's interesting that it went up. I would have thought.
Well,
that.
let me take it back. It did drop in 2017. 2018, it just went up.
Oh, it just went up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So who decides if it's overfunded by too much?
The loggers board establishes the rates that all members pay. And they're using actuarials and.
Yeah, and it's based on what type of plan you have. Like I said, you have a L6 where it's based on a multiple of your 2.5 years or whatever it is, you know. So, just depends on what you selected for your employees to cover.
I mean, going back, John, to that income statement where we had $9,000 extra, which is a kind of a rounding error. Being overfunded $2.8 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of control over that, I think. That's loggers, yeah. So,
I hate to blame somebody 100 miles away. That's a lot of money.
yeah, it is, right. But hopefully, you know, the market's going to stay good for it.
Which means our contribution should go down.
Well, and they did in 2017, 18, but what just took effect in October 1 went up.
Yeah, they have to give you 6 months' notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Jimmy Dale?
I make a motion, we accept the audit as presented.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Tammy.
thank you very much.
Next presentation is one on Camp David by Ben Smith.
Hello, everyone. I'm Benjamin Smith. I'm the founder and director of Camp David of the Ozarks, which is a summer camp program for children of prisoners, and also an after-school program and a mentoring program and additional programs for families affected by incarceration. So I put together a PowerPoint. I'm going to bring that up here.
Where's it physically at?
I'll talk a while he figures it out. Incarceration is a. When I talk about this, I want to share in a way that, you know, it's not a public, you know, we wrong these people. Obviously, when somebody's incarcerated, you know, they make choices that have affected the community. But what I want to present is how the family is affected by incarceration as well, because not only are the victims affected, but the family of the perpetrator is also affected by incarceration. And unlike a lot of losses in life, when a family member is incarcerated, the impact is significantly different. when a family member dies, the community has a tendency to gather around and support the family. But when a family member is incarcerated, what usually happens is the opposite. Everyone pulls away. And that family is left to deal with the effects of the choice of their loved one by themselves, and to a large extent. Actually, this past weekend we had 3 of our campers come out to camp and just hang out with our boys. The mom was going through a really difficult time. One of the boys was losing his eyesight. Another one was in the hospital because of emotional issues. And of course, the older brother is trying to just be brother. And because the mom had married someone of a different race, her family had abandoned her. And so we were able to bring the boys out and just be there for the boys. They had a grandfather who passed away, so these boys are largely without a father at all. And so we brought them out, just did family stuff, ate a meal together, made pizzas, did the airsoft or the Nerf gun battle in the house, Nerf darts all over the house, but just invested in these boys' lives. And it was neat because we've been running the Camp David program long enough that there were moms that were there to support the mom over the weekend as well. And so she was hanging out with 2 of our Camp David moms who was just pouring into her life and giving her hope again. Prior to this weekend, she had voiced to my wife, I don't think I can go any longer. And she was just at the end of her resources. And I think that the large thing that the family affected by incarcerated, their largest need is, they have the financial needs, but their largest need is the emotional support, it's the community support, it's people coming around saying, hey, we care. We understand you're going through something difficult, and we want to support you.
I don't know that that's going to come out. It's not reading.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wing it then. All right. I was building this today, so I should remember everything. Worldwide, America has 5% of the world population, but we have 25% of the prisoners. So that we outrun everybody, including China. So there's more people incarcerated in America than any other country in the world, and per capita we beat everyone as well. Only one that comes close is Rwanda, and that was because of the genocide, but we're still way ahead of them. In Missouri, I was just looking at the statistics today and crunching numbers. There's somewhere around 50,000 children that have a parent in prison. But when they estimate that 1 in 28 children in America have a parent in prison. But when they run a statistic like that, it only takes 1 year. And the problem is childhood is not 1 year long. And so we have the question of, well, how many children are affected by incarceration at some time in their childhood? And the 1 in 28 comes out to be about 2.7 million children. So when you look at the number of children that have been affected by incarceration at some time in their lifetime, it comes out to 10 million children in America today, which is almost a little over 3 times that number. So a lot of children are being affected by incarceration. And you think about your kids in your school and your community, and you think, wow, I don't know any of these kids. Where are they at? But what we found is we get to know the families and get to know the kids. Is they're out there, they just don't talk about it. My wife was going to Sunday school with a family for, I think she was in her Sunday school group for like 4 or 5 years. A grandma who's raising her kids. And 3 weeks ago, we took their kids out to Merrimack for the ironworks. And Grace was talking to the mom, the grandma afterwards, and she started sharing her story. And here, all these kids, the whole family, their parents were incarcerated. But she never shared the story before because of the shame that was associated with it. So, these families, there's a lot of kids out there, a lot more than we can imagine. And so their needs are, when they express their needs, talking to the parents and asking, what are the things that you need? The things that they need are support groups, somewhere to talk and share about their struggles, people who understand. They need someone to help them with childcare. One of the unique things about having a parent incarcerated is the fact that you are losing a parent. And for some of these kids, we understand the parent was not in the picture. was a missing dad. He wasn't filling his role. But then there are the dads who, they do something. They help with sneakers. They do a little bit. And then there are the dads who really were there, or vice versa, the moms who really were there. And so when one family member is incarcerated, there's that gap in parental supervision and all that. And then the effect of that is that the remaining parent has the responsibility of providing what the other parent isn't providing, and also just the leadership and the care for these children. And so these children are way under supervised. And that adds, an additional stress of, I like to use the story of the M16. We all know about the M16 in the military. Most of us guys do, right? We're in Rolla, Missouri, so I think I can go there, right? It was created as a gun that would wound a soldier, because if you wounded a soldier, you would take out 2 soldiers, because there'd be 1 soldier to care for the wounded soldier. And when a parent's incarcerated, you really take out 2 parents, because the remaining parent is trying to fill the roles of both parents, and they're not there. And when that happens, the remaining parent's ability to look out for, care for that child is significantly diminished, because they're under the stress of, how do I provide? How do I take care of all these things? And so moms make choices that they wouldn't normally make if they had all those things taken care of. They make choices about babysitters. They make choices about what their kids can and can't do, because they're so worn down that they just don't have the fortitude to hang on. And so that's the effect on the family. There's the stigma of having a parent incarcerated. There's also what we call the ACE scores, which is the adverse childhood experiences. And incarceration is one of the things on the list because of its unique combination of shame, loss, and trauma. When a family member is incarcerated, unlike a lot of events in life, there's no hero to call. The good guys are the ones that took him away. And so, for a child watching dad go out the door, you got to do something. Well, who do we call? We can't call the police. We can't. There is no good guy to call, because the good guys are the ones that did it. And it's just a reality. It's not like we faulted some way, but that's a huge impact on the child, because there's that unstoppable force of justice, and how do the kids deal with it? And so some of the programs that Camp David runs, we run a mom's retreat where we bring the moms out, and we have other moms who have been affected by incarceration, have had lived through that struggle, have learned to thrive again, and they're ministering to and they're helping the moms who are coming to the mom's retreat, giving them an opportunity to share their story. We give them breakfast in bed, which is, for a lot of these moms, super awesome. They get, we have a spa night, and we just listen to their stories and encourage them, and just are there for the moms as they share their struggle of being a mom or being a grandma and raising their kids. We also run an after-school program. We're running it out at Grace Church here in Rolla, where we bring out some of the kids in the community, have a parent in prison, and we have mentors, and we do activities together. They have a meal together. And one of the things I like doing with the kids is having them go around and say what they appreciate about their day, something that they enjoy, with that gratefulness. It's so easy for kids just to miss that. And then there's just the meal together. There's a statistic out there about one of the most significant things for how a child turns out in life is whether or not the family eats a supper meal together or eats a meal together every day. And just sitting down and eating together. For a lot of these kids, they've never done that. And to be able to model that for them. We also, that's that program. We also run a summer camp program where we bring the kids out for a whole week. And the summer camp program we've been working on for the past 15 years. We really have developed it to address the unique needs of children of prisoners. Both with just the outrageous fun of camp and just running and having shaving cream Bibles and all that kind of stuff, to having classes where we talk about incarceration and talk about the big questions of, am I bad because I love my mom or dad and they've done some awful crime? Am I bad because I hate my mom or dad? Is it my fault? And will I end up like mom or dad? And, you know, these big questions that these kids are carrying, but they've never been able to articulate them, but they still carry it. They wonder, will I end up in prison? And helping them realize, no, you have a choice in this. It's not just, you know, set for your future. So we run some of those programs as well. Another thing we do at Camp David, we have a leadership program where the kids, as they go to camp and get older, we train them into learning how to lead on staff. And so there'll be support staff, and they'll wash dishes and stuff like that. And it gives them an opportunity to learn work skills, learn how to work, and also learn how to serve others and find that joy in giving. And one of the unique things for our leadership training, we run a 20-hour leadership course called the Tyro Leadership Training Course, where the kids actually have to pick something that they're going to choose to fast for the week. So it might be soda, dessert, it might be Facebook, teaching them to that delayed gratification so I can pursue the things that I value in life, and teaching them how to be leaders worth following. And the impact on that is super significant. This past year, we ran several camps in the United States. We also ran some overseas. And total, we had 60 children prisoners that were serving on staff at our camps, which is super significant. We're excited about that. I guess the last thing I just wanted to share is just there's, you know, children prisoners, they're all around us, and they need our support, they need our encouragement. And sometimes it's just, what do we do, what do we say when somebody says they have a loved one incarcerated? How do we respond so they don't feel shame? And my original thought when we started bringing these kids out to camp was, let's not talk about it so they don't feel bad. And we quickly learned nobody's talking about it so these kids feel bad. And nobody's talking about it so these families feel bad. So if anyone ever expresses, hey, I have a loved one that's incarcerated, you know, the first thing we need to express is, wow, that took a lot of courage sharing that. And I'm sorry to hear about your loss. And if there's any way I can help you, let me know. And just letting them know, hey, I care. Because although the family member who's incarcerated, obviously, you know, justice has come to play there. For the family that's left behind, they need our support. We are having a Banquet for Hope, a gala. Let's Go Change the World Gala on November 30th. And we'd like to invite you all to come out for that. And I'll be here afterwards if anyone has any questions.
Where is Camp David?
We're 10 miles
Where's
south
the
of
gala? And the third question is, how do families that could use your services find out about you?
Okay. Camp David is 10 miles south of Rolla. I don't know if any of you know where Ray Saddle Club is. We're right next to the Saddle Club there. It's a little east of Lane Springs. And your second question, the gala is going to be at the Havener Center on November 30th.
The what center?
The Havener Center in Rolla. And the tickets are online. So they're $50 a ticket. And we are looking for sponsors if any of you are interested in sponsoring the event as well. And then finding out about Camp David, we connect with Prison Fellowship, and at Christmas time they run the Angel Tree Christmas program and purchase gifts on behalf of family members that are incarcerated, and we take that same list and invite the kids to camp. So that's our primary way of finding the kids, but we also have just individuals who know families and say, hey, have you checked out Camp David? And we sign up a lot of kids that way as well. We also run 1 week of camp for kids who are in the foster care program. About 80% of the kids in the foster care program have a parent that's incarcerated. So we also reach out to foster agencies and stuff like that.
Council, any questions?
You guys have a Facebook page?
We do have a Facebook page, yes.
Mike?
You didn't mention how many kids went through campus.
Oh, I did. We had 175 kids go through the camp program here in Rolla. We also started a camp in southern Indiana this year, and we started a camp in Dominican Republic this year, and Uganda this year. So we had a total of the camps that we've helped start for children prisoners. We had a total of 400 kids in all those programs. So it's exciting.
It's very commendable what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last presentation will be deferred for a couple of weeks, the RREC report. Next item are the board's and commission reports. There's 13 of them. Any questions on any of them? If not, moving on to old business. The first is an ordinance rezoning Lot 2 of Post subdivision. Bar property. Oh.
You got this, Steve?
Timing is everything in life.
Yeah, Steve, you took it over without the.
How do we move the new bit now?
There he is.
Okay. James?
Cinder Lori, I'm sorry about that.
Bar rezoning.
Bar rezoning, got it. Okay, just really quick, it's at the intersection of 4th Street and Oak Street. Owners are Anthony and Susan Barr. Madison Daly is the agent. He's the owner of Tolima Group. It's currently zoned C2. The proposal is to rezone from C2 to C3 to operate a warehouse distribution facility for small electronic components. And it's a wide range of current uses, but mostly used for residential, especially one family, but mostly zoned commercial. It's within the Central Core District, which is in the comprehensive plan. There's a mix of commercial, residential, and institutional uses. Renovation adaptive reuse is encouraged, and the city should work towards redevelopment of residential properties to allow new commercial development. That's from the Rolla 2020, the comprehensive plan. Just a few points in the analysis: land use compatibility, wide use of ranges in the area. The block is half apartments and half commercial. C2, which is currently zoned, contains equally intense uses as C3, such as gas stations. However, a significant portion of the surrounding blocks are currently C3, so the potential incompatibilities between land uses already exist in the area. PUDs were approved with the knowledge of C3 in the area and abutting C2, implying that R3 and C3 adjacency is acceptable in the area. As far as the intent of the comprehensive plan goes, the subject block and surrounding blocks are intended to become C2 or C3, which supports the ideas conveyed in the comprehensive plan pertaining to the encouragement of the area being transformed into commercial. Rolla 2020 refers to the goal of adaptive reuse, and this proposal is the proposal that accompanies this rezone is to repurpose the storage shed into a warehouse, which in turn should add to the community's tax base. As far as traffic safety goes, C2 and C3 uses, in terms of traffic generation, it's not easily discernible because some C2 uses are produce more traffic than C3 uses and vice versa. And I do want to I like to note with this, when you do intend to have a mixed-use district, it's generally, from general planning principles, you should take into consideration incompatibilities, and there should be special mixed-use zone districts. It's not just throw out all the commercial zones and then allow residential also. But that's something to think about in the future. And so, public and internal comments. No protest petitions have been filed to this department. However, one neighbor called me and inquired about the proposal, but did not submit any concerns. The owner of the block of 1 and 2 family units across from Rolla Rentals spoke at the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council meeting about the numerous and long-standing issues he has had with the living next to and owning residential properties next to C3 uses. In a 5-to-1 vote, the majority of the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended the approval of the proposal, and the action requested from the City Council is to conduct the final reading of the applicant's proposal to rezone the subject parcel from C2 to C3. And that's it. If anybody had any questions.
Any questions for James?
James, what is the storage shed being used for right now? Or what has it been? It was built in 03.
Officially, we told them that they were not supposed to be having any activity there. So as far as we know, there shouldn't be any activity going on there.
When you say no activity, do you mean potential future or no activity? period.
Well, no activity that isn't permitted.
Okay, so you're talking about a
operating
what-if
warehouse.
case, not the current case.
No, the current case, when they came in, we told them that there shouldn't be any warehouse activity.
Who's they?
The owner came in because I think we found out that they didn't have.
So you don't use this for anything, Tony?
Sir?
You don't use this for anything?
May I?
Yeah, please. I understand your question, but the answer seems a little bit odd. But go on. Go ahead.
My name is Tony Barr. I live at 906 West 12th Street. This building has been used for storage forever. I built the building when I purchased the Poe Gas and Appliance building and put mom and pop's used furniture in it. And subsequently we put the warehouse there for storage, whatever you want to call it, for overflow. And it has been used for that. And then when the Salvation Army purchased our building, we left it for personal use, for personal storage. And then the Tolima folks came along and they wanted to lease the building. And we just thought it would be nice if we put a restroom facility in it. And that's what's caused all of this confusion, or whatever you want, chaos. And we have no plans to fill it with hay or make a sandblasting or any kind of a commercial building out of it other than for storage. And the building, we own approximately 80% of the parking down there. So there's plenty of parking, and we let the Salvation Army use all of it. As long as they're there, they have the right to use any of that parking for their purposes at no charge, no cost whatsoever. We talked with Mr. Daly. There's going to be one car down there very periodically. That gentleman or lady will be doing inventory for them, and it's very simple.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So James, they're allowed to do that. So your answer to Ann was about a future potential use. Was that what you're driving at?
Well, she was asking what was going on.
I was just wondering what the current use was.
Because as far as we said, you can't operate a warehouse until because they wanted a sign permit and they want a bathroom.
Yeah, but hold on. I don't understand what that means.
Officially, we.
Are you saying what they're doing now is not legal?
If they're operating a warehouse, then it's only allowed in C3. That's why they had to get the rezone. Because it's specific in C3. It's specific.
I don't know what a warehouse is. A warehouse is storage.
That storage for an accessory storage building, it has to be on the same parcel first of all. But if it's just storage by itself, I mean, this is warehousing. They are taking in shipments. It's the literal. I mean, there's no other way to explain it but call it a warehouse. And in C3, it's specifically called out as a permitted use. So there's no way we can say it's allowed in C2.
Okay. I think we're getting more complicated than we have to, but that's okay.
So in the C2 zoning, it does say that cold storage and self or mini storage facilities are permitted.
Cold storage
and self or mini storage facilities.
That's mini storage and cold
but
storage.
Self-storage seems like that is exactly what he just said.
And that's probably a fairer interpretation as a C2 use. I think what they're doing now is they're wanting to lease that out to a third party, put a bathroom in it, and it's really those kinds of improvements that triggered this, right? I mean,
yeah, and a sign. They wanted a sign, and I mean it is warehousing. They're taking in pallets.
So they're conducting business as opposed to what the bars have been doing is just storage.
Yeah, correct.
And I would never call it a mini storage or self storage. That's for personal belongings. It's definitely not cold storage. It's actually the. Where's this specific? See that this is right here. It's the official in the permitted uses. It's called a wholesale operations sales office warehouse combination. So it is wholesale operations. There's no other way to define it, and that's the only reason we had to do this.
John, you have a question?
No.
Jimmy Dale?
My concern is, you gotta rezone that to C3 if we're gonna put a bathroom in it. That's BS.
And a sign permit.
I cannot believe that we're going through this right now because he wants to put a bathroom in there.
It's not because he wants a bathroom, is it? It's because they want to use it as a warehouse.
Yeah, they want to have operations. It's good.
I realize that, Mayor. Then why can't we just give him a variance on it and let him do it? Because there's not going to be anything there,
And
really.
we argued about the definition of variance once already.
It's not variance. None of us know what that means, that's for sure.
Use variances.
Don't even go there.
We've already destroyed that area down there because of the blanket C2 and C3 on zoning down there.
There you go.
I mean, you've already destroyed those first 3 blocks going down to 3rd Street. You might as well go ahead and rezone the whole area out there and be done with it, because and not to rezone the rest of it all the way down to 72. We destroyed that area.
The future land use map refers to that as core city. But
you wasn't here when there was a blanket rezoning of that whole area because they wanted to push it for commercial, and they wanted to destroy that whole area down there.
Right.
It's been C2 since the 70s.
This city council.
Whoever was on council 28 years ago.
My guess is the landowners put the pressure on to do that.
No, it was not, sir.
Oh, okay.
It was not.
So them adding value to the property didn't come into play, I suppose.
It was.
I mean,
never mind. I won't go there because I'd be calling somebody some names because that's beside
I'd like
the point.
to add something here. Actually, it's something relevant to what Jimmy Dale was saying in terms of. I think what was explained by Mr. Barr there seems fairly reasonable, but I think the point that's being made overall is if we change this to C3, like we changed a lot of these things to C2 and C3 a long time ago, we're making a change to the neighborhood that, for example, if this operation that's a small and simple warehousing operation, maybe only a truck a day happens, it's allowing that, but it's also allowing a much larger operation in a residential neighborhood that could have a much greater impact in the future. And I think I have a few comments I'd like to make, and it's more in reference to this whole area, kind of like what Jimmy Dale was saying, and I think we need to kind of relook at this a little bit. Some of the things I highlighted in what we said here is the immediate surrounding blocks range widely in use and character from noisy and aesthetically degrading activity of the rental of heavy machinery to the quaintness of single-family houses, even on the same block. C3 uses are generally associated with truck traffic and heavy traffic and are intended to be located along arterials. Truck-heavy traffic can be dangerous and be a nuisance for residential areas. In addition, outdoor storage is a prominent characteristic of C3 uses and can create aesthetic and noise issues for residential areas. So I just want to start with that in the sense that that's what we're doing down there. It seems like already, and if we add more of this that's supposed to be on an arterial, we're adding something to what is a lot of residents down there. I know that probably none of us live right there, but if we imagine ourselves in those shoes, that paints something different for the neighborhood. Ideally, in a use-based zoning scheme, there should be a transition between high-intensity zones to lower-intensity zones, and lower-intensity commercial office districts should provide buffers between high-intensity commercial zones and residential zones. That's another question. It doesn't seem like we're putting much buffer between these residents and immediately a C3 or something like that. So that's something else I want to point out. In summary, the comprehensive plan flume depicts a future of the CCD where apartments may abut C3 uses despite potential incompatibility. So we're admitting we have a bunch of incompatibilities. Attempting to accomplish mixed-use environments with traditional use-based zoning is problematic. For instance, C2 and C3 contain permitted uses that are auto-oriented and uses that could pose a multitude of issues for residential areas, whether single or multifamily, but at the same time are the only zones that permit uses that are appropriate for mixed-use districts, restaurants that serve liquor. Ideally, mixed-use environments should be regulated by zoning that regulates form and limits uses in a way that will produce walkability while minimizing incompatibility. So my question here is, with all that was written by, this was written by your department, I'm trying to figure out how is what we're doing in this area creating a buffer or transition, minimizing incompatibilities,
producing walkability, or mitigating danger. All things that were put in here. So none of that makes sense to me, and I'm trying to figure out what are we trying to achieve in this area. To me, it looks like we've created a sacrifice zone that if you're a resident down here, you're part of our new sacrifice zone, and if we decide to have any kind of incompatibilities of C3 right next to you, sorry for you. I'm just saying the optics look like that to me, and I'm trying to figure out if I was a resident down there, how I would be looking at this. And I'm not trying to single out Mr. Barr in any way, and I think what he's proposing seems fairly reasonable, but I'm just trying to figure out us as a city and as a body here and as our departments, and maybe this was done a long time ago, like was said, but what are we doing to help solve this problem for the future? Because those are the kind of things that seem like we're putting a hodgepodge of things together, and there's not really buffers and there's not really that. So those are the kind of things that I just wanted to bring up that are in this presentation, and how are we dealing with that for the future? Because otherwise we're going to keep having these same kind of problems.
Yeah, you're talking. Yeah, I mean it's like a conundrum, and
Right.
you want to permit to have a mixed use district. You have to permit certain types of uses, but unfortunately, those certain types of uses are mixed in with all these really noxious uses. And so, while this proposal appears to be in multiple ways consistent with the comprehensive plan and consistent with past land use actions like approving the PUD on a block that's designated as community commercial, it appears that not only is it consistent with the comprehensive plan, but it's also consistent with the community's the public good as determined by representatives in the past. And so
I guess I am questioning what their choices were potentially.
So I was just trying to point out that while this may be consistent with past decisions and the intent of the comprehensive plan, from a general planning perspective, next time that we do our comprehensive plan and put that and zone things, we should think about how we put together mixed use.
Right, and can we do anything to help this for the future, I guess is what I'm saying. Or are we just admitting that it is a sacrifice zone?
Well, create a mixed use district.
And put buffers maybe, like slowly bring it in as opposed to just bang, blanket, or?
That would be transect based zoning. So you would have to put some thought into how you, it's a whole project. First you have to create a mixed use district, and then different types of mixed use district zones, and then apply them in a transect based way.
Transect meaning gradually.
Intensity. So the
transition.
The most
which it doesn't seem was done here, and that's why I'm saying I know you're interpreting what's here before, but I'm asking kind of all of us and your department.
Right.
Do we have a solution that we can help try to fix this? Because otherwise, we might be adding to the problem as opposed to solving it.
There's no districts that even the center city district. That's all C3 uses, all C2 uses, all C1 uses, all residential uses. It's just everything. So that wouldn't fix it. You would have to create a new district.
I think it's worth keeping in mind the size of this building and this lot.
Right.
Ultimately going to limit
which I
the
talk
noxious
about,
uses, as you call
which
it.
I talk about.
Steve?
We're not going to solve this big issue tonight. Can we please just focus on what's in front of us and move forward on this other issue at another time so we don't keep these people here forever?
I did go down and talk to a lot of the folks that live in that area, and a lot of the points that Jimmy Dale was talking about are 100% correct. They're angry about how we've zoned down there. They're not happy with it. A lot of these, especially the homeowners and especially the ones with children down there, because I knocked on some doors, talked to some folks that had kids. They're not happy with the idea of any kind of semi-trucks down there. They even mentioned how awful it is to see the Salvation Army truck every now and again come down there. But it's very true that we are sacrificing that neighborhood, and it's not making the neighborhood happy at all.
Well, this was rezoned R3 in 2001, 18 years ago, not 17 years ago. Commercial 2, commercial 3, and
in 2001 it was industrial until 2001. Then it was zoned to C2. This block. Here, let me go back up here.
Okay.
So these were industrial in 4 blocks industrial until 2001. These 4 blocks have since they were C2. Most of them were C2 and since C1 and since the 70s. Sorry. And then these were rezones. A lot of these C2 zonings were right here, rezones. This was a rezone. So these C1 blocks have been that way for almost 40 years, 40, 50 years. It's just that these, in 2001, these industrial blocks, I actually took out the slide that talks about the history, were zoned a mixture of R3 and C3, and even R3 and C3 on the same block. So that's why I'm saying, it seems like we're saying that these should go together. So it's hard to say that this rezoning isn't consistent with past, how people have interpreted what the public good is in the past.
James, so if I remember going back a long time, 40, 50 years, a lot of that zoning was cumulative. So if you got a C3 zoning or even a manufacturing zoning, everything less than that was always permitted. And I think that's one of the things, that's why in the 70s, I think so much of this was broadly rezoned, because it gave sort of the flexibility to the user or the owner. It was easy for the city to sort of blanket those areas. Now that we're sort of trying to limit our rezoning to particular uses, residential, commercial, industrial, and give separation to them, it's running in conflict with a lot of the old zoning that's out there.
Yeah, that's definitely true, because people kept on building houses even though it was zoned for commercial and industrial, so you just kept on getting more and more residents.
Whoa, back up.
Well,
I was born and raised here,
yeah.
And that was all housing down there.
Oh, no.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, it was all housing, because there's a little house right there by Rolla rental that I run around with a guy that his family owned that house.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, I've been here a long time.
No, I know.
I know what's going on down there.
I've looked at historical photos. It's mostly been one single-family houses since even before the 40s, when it was in zoned industrial, the initial zoning of it being industrial.
I think my main point, and I understand the idea of like moving this forward, and I think I agree with that. I guess my point is I wanted to make a point here that we have a number of places in the city that maybe we need to come up with a new look at, like this area, the area between MST and the center that kind of has some issues with the neighborhood there, and then between the hospital and S&T, obviously things, there's a lot of changing, and it's just making sure that as we're making changes in town, we're being fair to the people that live there, because I just think, you know, it's easy to look from a distance and say, it's not my neighborhood, it's okay that that's happening, but these things cause things like danger for kids, crime, etc. And I think that it's just not fair for us not to put time into at least talking about it, number one, and number two, asking if there's something, hey, can we look at this deeper, or do we just kind of let this keep going, and each time this comes up, just ignore that?
Oh, I think the committee, the future land use people do that. You know, there's a 20-year plan. You know, and their work, you know, it's not just, you know, make do and, you know, when something comes up. I think there's been a lot of concerted effort myself, but.
I mean, I would love to see a mixed-use district and transect and form-based zoning, but I have to be told to do that.
Okay.
But, yeah, right now, like I say, using traditional, you know, conventional or traditional use-based zoning, trying to create a mixed-use district.
What would you need to be able to look at things differently from your decision-making process for you? What does that mean? The council has to decide something?
Comprehensive plan.
I mean, you could do it with the
Point of
comprehensive
order,
plan.
Mayor.
You should probably do it with the comprehensive.
Point of order. Thank you. Mr. Young asked us to get back to the point at hand, which is what we're going to do here. We can talk about this later on.
Okay. When do we talk about that? When is that?
Shut up, Dave.
Okay.
That's a really big project. It'll take a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this?
Yeah.
If not, can we have the final reading?
An ordinance that rezones Lot 2 of Poe's subdivision, which is, as currently configured, the parcel identified with the Phelps County Assessor, account number 7642, and the address of 104 East 4th Street, from the General Retail District to Highway Commercial District.
Move proposed ordinance pass.
Second.
I'm going to hold the vote until David comes back, because it has to be a majority of the council, right? John?
Yeah, it would take a full council, so seven votes carried.
I'd really like to see a variance for this project. I don't really like the C3, but I don't think anything C3 is going to go in there besides what's going in there right now.
I thought we talked about that last time and we couldn't.
Yeah, it came up.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
the issue of
permitted non-conforming use.
yeah, to apply variances to specific applications is very, very risky as far as the courts are concerned. You adopt rules, regulations, and zoning classifications, and it's got to be almost these extenuating circumstances when you can do that. So council has very rarely done it. I can't say they've never done it, but it would seem like an easy answer because almost every time you have a zoning case, you could almost say, gee, I'm willing to zone it as long as it's this particular use and owned by this person or for that long. And down the road, conditions change, people forget, it's not a record.
Not rezoning if we give him a variance or leave it C2. That's what I'm saying, basically.
Yeah, I know.
Conditional use permit, basically what I'm saying, on that C2. Allow him to put the bathroom in there and be done with it. That's what all he's wanting to do, and just, I mean, I don't see that there's room enough there for anything in C3, but if we zone it C3, anything can go in there.
Limited to the size of the lot, the building, of course, but.
Roll call vote?
Roder?
No.
Was that a no?
No.
Crowd?
No.
Murphy?
Yes.
Schott?
No.
Hines?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Jones?
No.
Eberly?
No.
Henry?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Mush?
Yes.
6 ayes and 5 nays.
Zoning has been approved?
No.
No?
No. It's not a majority.
I thought you had 6.
It's a majority of the full board.
Oh.
So you have to have 7 yeses.
You have to have 7 yeses. Zoning fails. What are the rules, John, to bring this back? Because I remember it can be brought back, but there has to be some time limit or something.
Yeah, I'd have to verify it. There are ways it could be reconsidered the same evening, and it can be brought up at the next meeting, but I don't remember the specific motions under Robert's
I
rules.
thought it was a year.
But there's a restriction on the applicant that they have to wait a year before they can initiate a rezoning
But
that's
we
been
could bring-
rejected.
we could bring it
Council can bring it back, yeah. And if there's a change in the application, it could also.
Okay, so this is a staff question. Is there a way to accommodate the concerns legally?
Yes.
A way to permit them to.
Taking into consideration some of the concerns that have been expressed here.
I mean, we could create a mixed-use district, but that wouldn't mean, why would you, that you wouldn't include warehouses in a mixed-use district?
Would we change the definition of warehouse?
Now, another option that I said it was possible, I didn't recommend it because I didn't really think anybody would go for allowing warehouses in C2, but.
Well, what if it's a warehouse under 5,000 square feet or something to that effect?
Yeah, what you could do is a text amendment to the C3 permitted uses, and actually that's a lot of times what text amendments are used for. It says permits warehouses for under a certain square footage.
Can we do some sort of conditional use?
Conditional use permit? You can do we can make it a conditional use permit for C2.
Now it's about a 60-day process because it's got to go through P&Z.
Wait a minute. Why, when I asked a few minutes ago, following up on Jimmy Dale, we all said it can't be done? And now
No,
you're saying,
let me clarify, because there's a difference between conditional zoning.
Okay, all right, conditional variance,
No,
semantics.
no, it's totally different. A conditional use permit is totally different than conditional zoning, rezoning. So conditional rezoning is when you rezone something and you put conditions on it. Say you have to do this, this, and this. Conditional use permit has to be specifically called out as a conditional use in certain zones. And so then that's a condition.
So there is a way to allow that particular use with the C2 zoning in a legal fashion?
You would have to do a text amendment to make it a conditional, listed as a conditional use, and then he would have to apply for a conditional use permit. Because being approved for a conditional use permit is the criteria is totally different than a rezone.
All right. I think that's what Jimmy Dale meant when you used the term variance. It's probably
Yes, got one conditional use permit as well.
But there is no currently conditional use for warehousing in a C2, so what James is saying is we'd have to go back to a text change to chapter 42, call it, recognizing that a warehouse of a limited size is a conditional use in C2 zoning. That can be done, but that's got to go through P&Z, public hearing, recommendation council. Council has to do an ordinance to change the language of the code to be considered.
Yeah.
After that.
That's different
the
than
60-day period.
Why are we making everything so hard?
That's just process, unless you're just going to sort of.
Just let people,
We didn't go through a process before, basically.
That's why we're dealing with
That's why we're trying to do better Dale, this time.
Well, but this, originally when this built, as Tony explained, this was an accessory building to the larger commercial use there, and then when they sold that off, that left this building as a standalone. So, what was an accessory building then became personal storage, and now is looking to become even small, a warehousing operation for somebody, a third party.
Right.
So,
What was Poe's gas when it was there? With the big tanks and everything down there and the trucks in there? What was it then?
It was
Huh?
not
Take a
a
look.
warehouse. It was a furniture store for a while.
It was Poe's gas before that.
Before then, I know, yeah. It was Poe's gas, but gas stations are permitted in C2. Or propane gas. I'm sorry, but I would have to do the research to find out if that was
With the storage tanks and the trucks
But it was
and
an
everything?
appliance.
I don't think so. Not in C2, partner. I don't think it is.
I would have to do the research because the zoning ordinance was totally different. But
If it didn't fit exactly with
it would probably be
Okay, so
retail.
there is an option. Could you, in fairness to the property owners, just present that option to them? No guarantee the council's going to follow through on it necessarily, but just so they have their options.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda, new business. Consideration to provide a sales tax exemption on major subdivisions. John?
So this was a new item that just surfaced in the last couple of weeks. As you know, Mike Wasner's doing a development that is off of McCutcheon. It's a big subdivision, it's a major subdivision. We have not had a lot of these over the last several years because, quite frankly, the cost of doing subdivision development is expensive, and the return or the risk to the developer has made it difficult to do those. And so developers have always looked for ways that they can reduce their cost or reduce their risk in a project. And Mike posed the question that seemed like a fairly reasonable question. The public improvements that are done by a developer in support of their subdivision development then become the city's assets to maintain in perpetuity. If the city were to have built those same improvements and used our own city crews, we don't pay sales tax on the purchase of those items. So the question was, can the city's sales tax exemption on the materials needed on the public improvement portion be exempt? So we sought out some legal counsel, talked with Gilmore Bell, talked with Lance a little bit about the ability of a city to be able to use their sales tax exemption on the public improvement portions on subdivisions. And the response was, yes, it can be done. It should be done under a development agreement that stipulates the conditions, but that, fundamentally that option is legal out there. Okay, so once we had that at least as an option, we started looking at, well, how might we put a policy together that would factor in not just Mike's development, but anybody who's in a subdivision development situation looking to do public improvements that are going to ultimately be transferred to the city and therefore exempt them from the sales tax that are applied. Most of those sales taxes are purchases on materials that are being purchased outside of the city of Rolla. Major, the asphalt, the concrete piping, a lot of those elements are things that are done outside of the area. So there's not a significant loss in tax revenue to the city by extending that sales tax exemption to a developer. In this case, it's just become confusing, not surprising. It seems like a reasonable thing to do. I think we've got a reasonable policy that sort of addresses the issues, but we really need some direction from City Council to determine whether or not this is something that we're willing to do, not just for this project, but for other like projects. And I think that's the first question we want to have. More recently, we've raised the issue of, does doing those kinds of public improvements raise a prevailing wage question? We posed that to both Gilmore and Bell and to Lance last week, and their reactions are that that does, as a public improvement and as a participation of a tax advantage or benefit, likely would trigger a prevailing wage project. Typically, and we're trying to verify this, when a developer does a development privately until such time as it's completed and passed on to the city, those projects are not subject to prevailing wage. Quite honestly, I could make the argument for prevailing wage there, but we'll leave that to the Department of Labor to try and kind of root through that. But we have not reached out to Department of Labor at this time for clarification. I think we want to just bring discussion to the council and see what kind of issues are out there.
Thoughts?
Jonathan? I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. If we exempt them from the sales tax, that invokes prevailing wage law on the developer?
If you look at the prevailing wage statute, it's 290-210. They define public works to mean all fixed works constructed for public use or benefit or paid for wholly or in part out of public funds. And you also have to understand that the statute also says that it is to be construed liberally, which means very broadly. That's pretty broad language, and then they tell you to consider it even more broadly than that. I don't think there's any doubt that creating a road system is a public work. The fact that we are providing funds, or at least removing sales tax from that, seems to be blurring the line significantly. And the one area that we have gotten in trouble with is with prevailing wage, because the Division of Labor is pretty broad in their interpretations.
Daniel?
I'm perfectly comfortable with discussing future implementation of an exemption policy, but what I'm not comfortable with is exempting before we even have that policy here for us to have it. I'm not comfortable doing that at all. And also, I'm almost sure my constituents wouldn't be comfortable doing that either.
I mean, just a suggestion to that, if the council is inclined and we need to do some fine tuning, there is just a draft policy, and this isn't submitted tonight for council approval, but you know, there is a mechanism here that would allow council to adopt a policy and then to apply it to an application that's out there. I think what you're saying is you're not comfortable taking action on a specific project and then coming back at a later date and considering a policy that might apply broader to other applicants.
Right, I don't want to exempt somebody from paying a tax that high without us first discussing it, having the voters talk about it, you know, things like that.
So it's not that you're necessarily against the policy itself.
Not at all. I'm not against discussing it.
Yeah.
From what I read, I understood that in years past, developers could get by with developments that may be a bit substandard in terms of the city's way of looking at it. They would pay for it, you know, but the concrete might not be the depth, or the driveways may not hold up to the trash trucks or whatever. But this, you know, with an arrangement like this, meeting the city's demands, you know, and the sales tax being provided, not paying the sales tax provided on the materials used just for the infrastructure of the roads there. Nothing from the house to the street. It's the mains throughout the whole thing. And then the city basically inherits that all back. I mean, the city will be maintaining it, but the city's going to be maintaining potentially better quality roads than they might be otherwise.
No, that's not true, Ann, because that policy's been in effect for a long time. So we're just talking about the tax. It has nothing to do with how the road is going to be constructed in terms of standards or quality.
Okay. I understood that it might.
No, but your point is right, but that was redone years ago.
Okay.
For the reasons you mentioned.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Tiffany?
I don't have an issue with looking into this because I think it's we're going to benefit from it. So to share the cost savings with the developer is not something that I see fault with. I guess the big question is are the developers going to be interested are they going to save anything if they're subjected to prevailing wage?
So that's really the issue. For us to take it back to you, that question has to be answered definitively. So do we have enough heads nodding to say, let's go get that answer?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Next item on the agenda, resolution granting license to Lehman Construction for a concrete plant.
And Lou, just before we get off that other option then, would be helpful if council, just as you get a chance over the next couple of weeks, look at that policy, and if there's some things that you're interested in. What I'm hearing is that we should plan on bringing this all back with a policy, address the prevailing wage issue. Whether or not the developer can take advantage of it or chooses to take advantage of it might be another issue, but the thought is to bring it back in a couple of weeks, I think.
Do we think we can get a definitive answer in a couple of weeks? I mean, when you call it Department of Labor, we call it Mars, or?
No, they'll probably answer, but I can almost assure you that if you ask the Department of Labor if you're supposed to use prevailing wage, their answer is going to be yes.
Well, what if you don't ask? What if you send a one-way letter and say, this is what we're going to do?
Then you may end up having to write a very large check at the end.
No, I'm just saying, you ask, but you don't ask.
I don't think that's going to work with the Department of Labor.
Let's talk.
We asked.
I just wanted to clarify that we'll plan on bringing it back if we can get an answer to that issue.
No, Mayor, that was a slick Willie right there.
No, instead of saying, what do you think, you're inevitably going to get the answer you don't want.
But
Because
that's
somebody on the other end is going to go the ultra-conservative route. But if you write the letter and say, this is our interpretation, this is what we're going to do unless you tell us differently.
And what that's going to do is say, we're going to come down and take a look and see what you're doing, and oh, by the way, that's a violation.
I never said I was a lawyer.
This may be a dumb question, but do they have to pay prevailing wage on the whole project then, or just the projects that
Public
are?
improvement.
No, it'd be
Okay.
the public improvement.
Okay.
It's only the public improvement.
Okay.
And to be clear, if we as the city built the public improvement, there's no question whether or not we would have to do prevailing wage. Absolutely would have to.
When you say we, that could be if we sub it out too, not necessarily with just our own people.
Yeah. Any
Correct.
contractor would
If we contract to have the public works done, there's no question that that's a prevailing wage. And when you start blurring those lines, they're looking to find places, cities that are trying to avoid paying prevailing wage. And they're going to say that we're trying to avoid paying prevailing wage by having the contractor do it, and we're having somebody else pay for it. But we're going to provide all of the materials, and then you're going to give it back to us. It's going to sting.
That was what all the voting was done for on the right to work law. And that's exactly what's going on right now.
The law is now what, $75,000?
Yeah.
So should that be in our policy too?
Yeah, we had put in the policy one option at a minimum amount of $100,000 of private investment. Wasn't really thinking prevailing wage, it was just trying to set it as, if we're going to go through all that work, we want to make sure it's worth it to everybody that's involved. But yeah, we can reference that $75,000 specifically.
Yeah, I don't know how much road you can build for $75,000, but.
Not much.
Not much. Next item on the agenda is the resolution on the concrete plant.
Yeah, so this is another interesting issue that surfaced somewhat as a result of the project on McCutcheon. And as you know, that Lehman Construction, who is the developer or the contractor for the Highway 72 extension, came to council and got a conditional use permit with a duration through December of 2018 to build a temporary concrete plant that is allowed under a conditional use permit in certain commercial zones. C3 is one that would have allowed that to be a by right use or an automatic use to place a temporary construction plant in. In this case, the St. Maria's Tatandra project is interested in doing concrete, and I think this gets into a little bit the question you were raising about the quality of the concrete being superior to that of an asphalt street, and we would agree with that. So the idea of Lehman possibly doing the concrete work there required either an extension of its current location on Mercy Parkway or this possibility of relocating it to the city's public works yards, which happens to ironically be zoned C3, where a concrete plant would be a by right use or permitted use there, requiring city council approval to place it on city council, city property. We did think that we spoke with lots of the businesses surrounding the property off of Mercy Parkway and found no objection to the project. And then the very last day when we were sort of working on this, we heard from the hotel owner, not the manager there, but the owner, who took real exception to an extension. So we started to look at what would be another option, and that's how we came to this prospect of relocating this onto city property, which happens to also be much closer proximity to the project on McCutcheon. So what we have prepared for your consideration is a grant of license by the city of Rolla to Lehman. We proposed doing this through 2018. There's nothing magical about that. I'm sorry, 12 months beginning in 2018 would run through 2019. That period could be less. We just didn't know if there was other projects that might come along where a concrete plant like this might find more business. We negotiated a $500 per month rental on the facility. Lance was very thorough on the liability issues as part of the license agreement, and so we're submitting that for council consideration. There is a proposed Exhibit A in your packet that shows the proposed site. That's a big site. The actual size of a concrete backed plant, as you know, off of Parkway is very small. It would actually go up in the northeastern corner of what we identified as a proposed site, an easy 500 feet or more from any adjacent properties to the east or to the south. There's a substantial elevation difference and lots of vegetation screening it, so I don't think it would even be visible to the surrounding properties there. So we're just throwing that out as an option of keeping Lehman, who's done very good concrete work on a large scale in Rolla, and possibly doing the concrete work on the Tatandra project.
Any questions?
Jim's got one.
Jim?
John, it's going to be located, if we agree to this, will be located over there by the recycle plant in that area?
It'll be back behind there, closer to the public works yard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw that. Okay. That would alleviate a lot of the heavy trucks from running all over town.
For sure.
And it'd just be a short distance from there to the project.
Right, which is wear and tear on city streets. It's
Right.
adds traffic congestion. So there are a lot of advantages, we think, to having it on the east side of town than the west side of town.
Any other questions?
Move we approve.
We weren't sure if council was going to be willing to approve tonight. You don't have to. We actually could bring this back to the next meeting, but if you would like, we did prepare a resolution that's in the packet that would approve that grant of license.
He still got his motion out there?
There's one motion, no second.
Second.
Motion made and second. Would you read the resolution?
A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a grant of license by the city of Rolla between the city of Rolla and Lehman Construction LLC.
Resolution passed.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution is approved. Next item, Chief, discussion on gas stations.
Before I talked about the gas station issue, I want to just bring up one other issue. I didn't have time to get it on the council packet, but we recently had an armed robbery in our town by a young man that was going to buy a PlayStation off of Craigslist. The guy agreed to buy the PlayStation. The guy never had a PlayStation. He met him on the Salvation Army parking lot, and it ended up being an armed robbery. We got the guy. We got the robber in custody, but I just wanted to remind the citizens of Rolla that the police department is a safe place to do these transactions. We ask that people come either on our parking lot, which is completely covered by surveillance, and on a case like that, you know, a hand-to-hand transaction, they could actually do it in the lobby of our police department. It's a lot safer. In interviewing the young man, my detective even asked him if he'd agreed to meet you in the parking lot. He said, well, of course I never would have done that. So it would have saved this young man the getting robbed. I mean, so just a reminder to the public to please use our parking lot if you have any kind of transactions off of anything you're buying off the internet. It's getting to be that time of year, and we just want people to be safe. The second item I'm bringing forward to you is a problem that we've noticed with our police department with gas station drive-offs. Now, the gas stations in the city of Rolla, some of them require you to prepay, either by going in and giving the cashier money or by using your credit card. But there's other gas stations here that don't require that. Those gas stations have a very large number of what we call drive-offs, people pumping gas in their car and then just taking off. They call the police department and they want the police department to get their money back. In the last year, we've had 187 drive-off reports. Now, when I'm talking about drive-off reports, I'm talking about that we actually take a report, we do some kind of an investigation, and the officers try to get these gas stations their money back. It's a big drain on the resources of my police department for something that is 100% preventable. So what I'm going to do, and I just wanted to make you all aware of this, is I'm sending the gas stations a letter saying that we are no longer going to take drive-off reports unless we have enough information to actually apprehend the person that did it. And by that I mean they have to call us within a timely manner, and they have to have a vehicle description and a vehicle license plate. If they give us that, obviously it's a crime, we're going to go after them. But the letter's also going to say that we're not your collection agency. We're going to prosecute these people for stealing. And if you're not going to go through with prosecution, then we're not even going to bother taking a report from you. I'm not going to name any gas stations, but we have a gas station in town they have faulty programming on their pumps, and you'll have a person go up and put a credit card in and start pumping gas. Well, the thing is that there are 5 prompts that you have to actually do on the keypad of the pump before it accepts your credit card. So these people are literally putting their credit card in there, taking out the thing, and they're pumping gas, never realizing that it's not going on their credit card. Well, this gas station waits till the end of the night, which is what a lot of them do. They review their surveillance footage at the end of the night, realize who drove off, and then they call us and give us a stack and say, here's tonight's drive-offs. And it's just really wasting our time. So I am going to send this letter out to them and tell them that we're no longer going to do it, as, we're not going to be your collection agency. I'm not going to put it that frank, but say that we have no problem in investigating a crime as long as we treat it as a crime and you agree to prosecution. Now, it's never been done like this here, but it's become a real problem, and it's just taken. And I've realized this because I've been taking quite a few hours on the street myself just to go out and ride around. And the other night I was at Walmart, and there was a drive-off up there by the highway, and they were heading down 63, and I thought, great, they're going to come right to me, I'm going to get an arrest. And the car never came, and finally I said, when did this happen? They told me it happened 4 hours ago. So it's things like this. And then I actually asked my supervisors, is this common? And they said it's very common. We just spend our time chasing after people, and we become the collection agency for the gas station. So I just want to make you aware that I'm sending this letter out in case you get any phone calls from the gas stations. Yes, sir.
Chief, I just want to say I fully support you on this. It's preventable, and it's draining our resources from what you need to be doing, so thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, I got a quick one.
Yes.
Lance, do you see any issues with this?
I don't think so.
Do you need to review his letter before he sends it out?
We've already had that discussion.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Moving on to claims and or fiscal transactions. The first one is a motion awarding a bid for police vehicles.
Earlier this year, you gave us permission to buy 4 Dodge SUVs. Now what we're asking for is the money to equip these Dodges. Now most of the equipment will transfer from the vehicles to the Dodges, but some of the equipment will not. And because of that, we have to buy some new equipment. We put out for bids. We've got 4 bids. The cheapest one came back from Public Safety Uplifters for $6,490 per vehicle for a total of $25,960.80.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All Opposed, same sign. Awarded to Public Safety Uplifters. Second item is a motion awarding a bid for a sludge truck.
We advertised and asked 5 manufacturers to submit a bid for replacement of our 2003 sludge truck. We received one bid from Lenco Precision LLC out of El Paso, Illinois for $462,250, and with an offer to take a trade-in on our existing unit for $28,750 for a total of $433,500. This unit is built to order, take about 10 to 12 months to get it. We'd be required to put down a 25% deposit, and then the balance would be payable upon delivery. Just by way of review, we land apply our wastewater sludge at the end of our treatment train. We have wastewater sludge that's fully treated, and it's suitable for fertilizer. And that's exactly what we do with it. We put about 6 million gallons of liquid sludge on pasture and hay fields on land we own and also on land that's leased. The one that we do is we have about 60 acres. We pretty intensively fertilize, and we get 2 hay cuttings a year out of that particular piece of property that's bid. We don't get a whole lot of money for the hay, but it's in order for it to work, the nitrogen buildup in the plant material has to be removed from the side, otherwise it builds up. So the harvesting process is very essential to that whole treatment train. Land application is the least expensive method for disposing of sludge. In this particular case, our capital cost would be $433,500, and we run about $150,000 budget on doing that. At the other end of the spectrum is landfilling. That would require about an additional $2 million in equipment, as well as about $500,000 a year in tipping fees. So that's the 2 ends of the spectrum. Right now, we're permitted to be able to continue with our sludge program, and we would like to do that. This unit will allow us to actually go out on the roads and travel a distance to apply this. So we're going to look for new customers for our sludge. We can also get the sludge from other 2 plants and transport it to the Southeast Treatment Plant. There's a picture of our existing unit. It's 15 years old. We've kind of held it together for the last 5 years, kind of wait to see how this new permitting process would take place. We're still going to be able to continue to do this for the foreseeable future. So it's time for us to replace this equipment.
Steve, define foreseeable future. How secure is the permit that we have for land disposal?
Permits are on a 3 to 5 year cycle, depending on which plant. I believe this one's a 5-year cycle. There again, we're entering into this agreement with DNR on a basis that how we're going to operate for the next 10 years, and so it's good for at least 10. I'm going to guess.
So our agreement with the state will include land disposal.
And I'm going to guess that in our particular case, because we're in a very rural area with a lot of very suitable land that's available for us to use, I think for the foreseeable future, 20, 30 years in the future, this will continue to be the way to dispose of this.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Steve? John?
Steve, we may have talked about this, but please remind me. Have we tried to sell this sludge to a real fertilizer plant instead of us investing almost $500,000 in a truck to haul it around?
Yeah, no.
Like
no one's going to buy our sludge from us. It's not in a liquid form. It's just not marketable. Now it would be marketable. Some cities do. The city of Milwaukee makes a fertilizer out of theirs, and they do actually sell it. But you're talking millions of dollars of plant to process, bag, and.
I just wonder if there's not another organization out there that has a setup that could come suck it out of our lagoon or whatever it is and take it somewhere and do what we want to do with it, or do what we're going to have to do with it.
There's no one out there that's going to do it cheaper than we can. As I said, this is the absolute minimum that you can get by with. You're not going to get people to do it for less than what we're doing.
Because it's pretty much it's rolling almost every day, right? I mean, how frequently are we rolling?
I mean, it's every day that the weather permitting. Like today, obviously we can't do it. But it's order of magnitude, I'm gonna guess we're probably out at least 9 months out of the year. And a lot of times in the summertime, in order to catch up, it's a 7-day-a-week operation.
Make a motion, we award the bid.
Second. Motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Bid is awarded to Lens Precision. Moving on, open citizen communication. Is there anyone that would like to speak to City Council? Frank?
Okay, I talked to Jimmy Dale. I guess I'll have to talk to the rest of them.
Name and address for the record, Ray.
Ray Schwackhart, 1342 South Rolla Street. The subject of the sales tax giveaway to the subdivision, I am against it. He has had a year to ask for it, and it's right now at the tail end moment. Maybe the next guy on down the road, I wouldn't bother. I just don't like this idea.
Just so I understand, Ray, is it the timing or in principle?
In principle, general, but especially the timing.
Okay.
That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
My name's Frank Furman. I'm with the Friends of the Rolla Public Library, and we're having our semi-annual book sale starting on Thursday, November 15th, for members between 5 and 8. If you're not a member, you can join at the door. Individual memberships are $10 a year. Seniors and students are $5, and family is $25. Otherwise, Friday, November the 16th, between 9 and 7, or excuse me, 9 in the morning and 7 p.m., and Saturday between 9 and 2:15, and then between 2:30 and 4:30 is our famous buck a bag sale. We provide the bags. You put in whatever you can put into them. I've seen up to 22 books in one bag. So please come out, support the library. All the money that's raised goes to the library.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other citizens? Moving on to Mayor and the City Council comments. With your consent, I would like to appoint Sarah Marcus to the Library Board to replace Melody Lloyd, whose term expired in March or April of this year.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any other City Council comments? Yeah. Good. I'll do the next section. Go ahead.
Some of you probably know, Chief up here backed out this year on it, but Rolla PD and Phelps County Sheriff the guys are looking pretty gruffy. We're allowed to grow beards for this whole month, but it's only to raise money for Shop with a Cop. So if you see an officer out there, you can give it to me. But we're taking funds, you know, if you want to donate $1, $5, or $100, or $500, we take whatever you want to give, and be glad to have it, because right now we've got a list of 150 kids that the school has picked out for us, and let me tell you what, I have enjoyed the heck out of that because of the smiles that you see on these kids. And we have nothing to do with picking the kids, but the guys, all the guys, really enjoy taking these kids through. And a lot of times we get a list from the kids that mom or dad has written up for them, and I tear mine up because I say it's for you kids. So we just, that's what it's for the kids. And we want the more money we get for the program, the more kids we can take through. And we spend $75 to $100 on each kid. So we really enjoy it. I mean, I do. I get a lot out of it. Just want to say so. Don't think too much about the guys looking grumpy, and some of them grow a beard. Chief didn't like it last year. He said he didn't like his beard.
I still raise my $100.
Is RPD doing it too this year?
Yeah. This will be our 3rd year.
Now you have, if you make a commitment to it, to grow the beard, you got to come up with $100. So it's.
I think some of them raised a whole lot more than $100.
Well, they do, and we've already probably got almost $2,000 that the guys have come up with. All the guys are doing it. So people are donating. I got my daughter working on a couple of things, projects. So.
You?
Huh? I'm doing it. I started my $100 already.
He's licking rough.
You better put a little fertilizer on it.
I know. Hey, it's fertilizered out. It's white. It's decaying a little bit.
Okay, tomorrow, very, very important day. Please vote. One other comment I have, the downtown merchants that put together and put a lot of work in Boo Palooza was fantastic. The ladies were there. Any comments you would like to add to that?
Oh, there was lots of great costumes, and it was a very well attended event.
Yeah,
we
it
had
really
a lot
has.
of kids.
Continues to grow. All of those downtown holiday events just seem to be getting more and more.
I had several people tell me they enjoyed it, but they left. They said there was just too much crowd up there, really. Said it was
It's a nice
packed.
problem to have.
It was packed.
Nice problem to have.
That's a good one.
Any other council comments? We do have one item for closed session.
Don't move. We go in closed session.
Second. Roll call vote.
Jones?
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Williams? Williams? Williams?
Yes.
Young?
I'm collecting money already over here. They're just growing, guys.
Hines?
Yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
Henry?
Tiffin?
Oh, yes, sorry. I was thinking
Crow?
back.
Yes.
Mush?
Yes.
Roder?
Yes.
Eberly?
Yes.
Sir.
Scott?
Yes.
11 ayes.
That's why I was right there.
I just want to make sure that the chief doesn't